Hello, everyone. Again, this is Johnny Farias, your host, and today I am here with one of the sheriff candidates for Miami-Dade County, Mario Knapp. Mario Knapp, thank you for coming out. Thank you for being here, and thank you for letting the viewers know your stance on stuff, which the questions I'm about to ask.
No problem at all. Thank you for the invite.
So everyone, let's get it on, and let's talk to Mario Knapp. Mario, the first question I have for you is about vision, and basically it's, what are your qualifications to be sheriff? Why are you the best person, and why do you want to become sheriff, more importantly?
Right. So first, I'm a product of a single mom and grandmother. My brother and I were raised. That's why I have so much respect for single moms, because I recognize the challenges associated with it. But it can be done, because my brother and I think I think we came out pretty good. But I started in the police department in '94. I went through the academy. I held every civil service rank in the department, which means I was an officer, I was in the SWAT team, I was an instructor in the SWAT team, I was a sergeant in narcotics, and then I went over to the training bureau as the subject matter expert for all matters related to use of force or any application of force. And I did that for 18 years. But after that, I became a lieutenant. I worked in the Port of Miami. I then became the commander of the Robbery Intervention Detail, which is Miami-Dade County's most high-profile and volatile violent crime initiative, or violent crime suppression initiative in Dade County. And I was the commander of that for 5 years. Then they brought me back to training. Then I was a captain in 5 different areas. I was a captain in the Northside District in Liberty City. I was a captain in Kendall District. I was a captain in the Warrens Bureau. I was a captain back at the Training Bureau. And then I was the acting chief of communication for the entire department. And after that, I got promoted to major, where I oversaw the SWAT team, the bomb squad, the aviation unit. So all the helicopters, all the airplanes, the boats, the motors, the divers, the K-9, and the incident management team, which is why I was the operations commander for Surfside building collapse from the inception. And I also wrote all the active shooter, or what we refer to now when I changed the policy to the mass casualty attack protocols for Miami-Dade County, which is the first time that it's not a policy that's specific to just Miami-Dade Police Department. Right. We brought in dispatchers, we brought in a fire chief, so that it's a global policy, which I think right now is probably a national model. So that's kind of my background. Now, what my vision is for the police department is, I think in recent years, we haven't had a lot of vision. We haven't had a lot of I'm going to use the term strong leadership in terms of communication and knowing what's expected of everyone in the department. I say all the time that we've been kind of a soda can floating in the ocean, with no forward momentum, no rudder, no vision, just no direction at all. If you look at nationally, last year there was an 18% increase in officer resignations and early retirements. And that's a result of, I'm going to say, this attack on police, the anti-police sentiment that grew. It was all politically charged, and it resulted in the fact that officers are actually still today afraid of doing their job. And when you have police officers that are afraid of doing their job, they're no longer in a hurry to get to my kid's house when they call the police, or your kids or your parents' house, right?
Understood.
That's part of the issue. And so my vision is to have a principle-based police department. I don't want it to be scenario-based. I want it to be principle-based, and I want it to be responsive to the residents of Miami-Dade County.
Okay. So if elected, what's your first thing you want to accomplish in your first 30 days?
Well, here's what we have to do. We have to reevaluate the department, because we're not set up right now where the structure is designed for public safety. That's not the priority. And what I mean by that is, we need a lot more uniformed patrol on the streets. I mean, the question to the public is, how often do you really see a uniform patrol car driving around? And people feel safer when they see them. But they don't feel safer when they're behind you, but they feel safer when they see them. And remember that crime is based on 2 things. It's based on the opportunity to commit the crime and the risk associated with doing so. And both of those are from the perspective of the bad guy, not of the good guy. And so the way to reduce the opportunity for crimes to be committed is to have more officers on the street and be more visible.
So they see more cops, and
exactly.
for them to want to.
And the way to raise the risk associated with committing the crime is to have more uniformed police on the street and visible. And so those are some of the things we need to do. But the other priority I have is I want to bring back a public corruption unit. The Miami-Dade residents, I think, are tired of hearing every day on the news that there's another recycled politician who's been in the circuit for this many years. And, you know, and I'm not saying that there's corruption. I'm just saying that the Miami-Dade residents deserve to know that if there's an allegation, there's going to be an independent body that's going to follow those allegations, look at the bank accounts, follow the money trail, and the cards fall where they may.
Right. Well, and that's, I'm glad you brought that because that's segue into what I wanted to ask you. So, in crisis and special handling, that's what I titled my question. What would you do and how would you go about if you had to arrest one of your own deputies?
Well, I mean, we've done that. We've done that historically, you know. Look, nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. And why? Because that puts a damper and that only contributes to the challenges we're seeing now with public perception and
Right.
you know, and the support of the police. So I did a lot of subject matter expert work for Miami-Dade County. The reason why I mentioned that and the reason why it's relevant to the question is because in expert work, once you lose your credibility, you will never gain it back. It's very difficult. And you can be credible for 15 years, but that one case you do where you lie or you misrepresent something, you lose your credibility. And I think that's the same with police work. So I want to come back to a department where people are held accountable. And they're not held accountable because we necessarily are looking to arrest cops, but it's because we have to make sure that the public knows that when we do find them, we're going to do what we need to do to get them off the street. You know, it puts a tarnish on the entire industry, you know. So there's different ways that I think in internal affairs investigations we need to adjust so that it becomes more, I'm going to say, so we avoid nepotism type things in the department. So there's a plan for that. I don't know how far you want to get into the subject, but
Right.
but it's definitely something that we're gonna root out and we're gonna leave no room for because it only gives us and the good officers that are out there doing their job every day, it gives them a bad name.
Understood. Okay. How would you improve the way the department deals with people with mental illness?
So there's a lot of programs right now. Now, this program actually started after I left, and I'm a person that I believe in. We have to measure twice and cut once. There's a push now to have what we call providers co-respond with police. I know it started here. I know that it's fluctuated in efficiency in different parts of the country. And so I would want to reevaluate that personally because I think it's really important. Mental illness, there's a combination of a lot of things that, you know, in between the homeless, between the mental illness thing. Remember, we're now in the pharmacological era. And what that means is it used to be that before, if you had somebody that had mental illness or severe mental illness, they put them in a mental illness facility. The problem is it's not illegal to be mentally ill, right? So you can't house those people that way. That's how we feel. So there started the pharmacological era, which means that we'll give them medication. The problem is if they don't take their medication, now they're back on the street and they could be a danger to themselves or others. So there's always got to be a fine balance, but having a chemical imbalance doesn't make you a criminal and doesn't mean you should be treated like one. So we have to monitor that because some of our own kids are suffering from mental illness, and this is something
Right.
that we, you know, people need to be treated like humans.
Understood. A question that I know that my viewers are going to say, why didn't I ask? So I got to ask, and is how would you approach issues of racial profiling and discrimination in law enforcement?
Right. So I believe in what we used to call proactive policing. And I know it because I was the commander of RID. I was a sergeant in narcotics. And there was a term that we used, proactive. We called it proactive policing. And the idea was if we go out there and we put as many people behind bars as possible, and I'm talking about criminals. I'm not saying we indiscriminately did it. But within that big net of people that we were looking to arrest, the theory was if the guy that's committing crimes is off the street, or even minor crimes like buying marijuana, right? If we get him off the street, there's less likelihood that he's going to break into a car, break into a house to buy marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem was we were focusing too much on that, and I think now I call it what I refer to now as protective policing. And it's still that we're going to go out there. It's still that we're going to go and do police work and stop crimes from happening, because there needs to be consequences for crimes. We can't have that slippery slope. But I think the focus needs to be, for example, in relation to, let's say, because I mentioned it, narcotics investigations. Should we really be going after the buyer all the time? We only need to get as many buyers as we need to build the case. And once we have enough to build the case, then we go arrest the seller. That's
Right.
the person we're looking for. But it got to the point when we were looking at proactive policing, it got to the point where we were just looking for number of arrests instead of the quality of arrest. Right. So those are things that should be adjusted, and we're going to do that. We're going to bring back the tactical narcotics unit within 3 weeks of me taking office, because fentanyl is a huge problem in the community. I say all the time that fentanyl should no longer be considered a drug. It should be considered a weapon against humanity, and that's what I think it is.
Okay, but I'm glad you think that, because I believe that also it's gotten out of hand.
Right.
I think law enforcement lost control.
Mm-hmm.
Not because they just couldn't control it, just because it's gone haywire everywhere.
Well, one of the things that's interesting, though, you got to remember, is that the Miami-Dade Police Department removed the tactical narcotics team, which is the team that handles street level narcotics.
Right.
And so,
do you know why they removed it?
Yeah. So it was removed because, and I hate to say this, but because of politics. It was removed because they were making a lot of arrests. There were a lot of people that felt like there was profiling there, and I don't think that's the case. I think that the reason why people thought we were profiling was because we were getting large number of arrests dealing with, more so the buyer than the seller, where the focus of that unit should have been the seller. And so there's a lot of adjustments we need to make, but I don't think that the answer was to remove it, because now we have nothing. I mean, look at the fentanyl problem. Look at the number of overdoses that are happening. I mean, in South Florida, we have a large number of overdoses. We're leading in some in comparison to other parts of the country. So we need to bring that unit back immediately.
Well, being you said that it got removed because of politically motivated issues. I mean, you're running as a Republican.
Yes.
And they decided, I guess the governor decided to make those type of elected seats to run as partisan.
Yes.
How would you go about trying to remove the politics from your office? Right. Because I believe it shouldn't be a Republican Democratic office. Because it isn't like you as a Republican are only going to defend the Republicans. Yeah. You're out there for all of us.
Right.
So how would you try or attempt, or in your view, remove that political aspect out of it so you can do your job correctly?
So if you follow my platform, and I encourage everyone to do so, to fact check everything I say, I always talk about that we have to remove the politics from policing. Public safety first, politics last is what it should be. I have never in 27 years, no matter in what level in the department I was or in any corner of the county that I was working, I've never based a decision on the response to what's your name, date of birth, and what's your political affiliation. And whoever asked that question should be in jail, whether Republican or Democrat. This is a partisan race. That's state law was written that way. I agree with you. It should not be partisan. I think that it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, white, blue, green, yellow. It doesn't matter what color you are, what nationality you are, what ethnicity you are, what sexual preference you have. Every single person in Dade County deserves to feel safe when they walk outside. And so I don't think that it should be dependent on political party. I plan to represent Miami-Dade County as a community, even though I'm Republican. But I plan to represent the community, not the party.
At the moment right now, there's measures to ensure both officer accountability and conduct.
Right.
What would you change to have better performance in that? Right. If you think there needs to be?
Yeah. So I think just the way we handle internal investigations, a lot of people think that, like, for example, that internal affairs gets people in trouble. Internal affairs is a fact-finding entity. So if there's an allegation that comes in, it gets sent over to internal affairs. Internal affairs, the detectives go and they're supervisors, and they'll go and investigate it, and they will figure out what the allegation is and write their findings. And then they handle that over to what's called a disposition panel. And that's generally chiefs and above. And they sit there on a table like this, and they look at the case, and they look at everything for the merits of the case, is the idea. The problem is, one of the issues, I like to get rid of the perception that there might be some kind of political influence in it. And so one of the things that I want to do is, when that file goes to the disposition panel, all the names, the badge numbers, and all of that should be redacted so that it's a 3,200 man department. Everybody thinks we all know each other. We don't all know each other. We can have cases where there's somebody that I don't know, but we can also have cases where it's somebody that I do know. And I want to make sure that the public understands and the command staff understands and that the community at large realizes that when these disposition panels and findings are made, whether they're sustained or not sustained, that they are based on the merit of the incident and not on the person. So in other words, I'm now the chairman of this panel. Right. I'm looking at it. I don't know who it is. It could be an uncle of mine, but I will never know that, and I'm going to make my decision based on the merits of the case, not on the person. I think that's a really, really, really strong start to not so much transparency, because it's less, you actually know less, right? But to ensure that the public realizes that we're doing it in a way that's that there's integrity and honesty involved.
Okay. Now let's flip it around now. What steps would you take to ensure the privacy and the rights of citizens and that they're respected?
Right. So one of the main differences between a police chief and a sheriff is that not only does the sheriff not report to politicians, and so therefore right there in itself, the politics should be somewhat removed. But we know there's politics in every office in Dade County, right? But one of the big differences is that the sheriff's job is to be the representative, the law enforcement head, who represents the people of the county, not the politicians and not the government. So the main thing that the sheriff has to contend with and make sure that we have a sheriff that's committed to that is to make sure that everyone's constitutional rights are respected, independent of my personal opinion. I mean, I may have a personal opinion, but I have to look at the Constitution, reference what's going on, see if it's constitutionally protected. And if it is, we have to make sure that people's constitutional rights are, and that's for the right to freedom of speech, the right to, free and to be free of any search and seizure. All those have to be respected, and that's what we're gonna focus on.
Okay, I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the governor signed or is considering removing a lot of those citizen advisory boards, right? That oversee police incidents. How do you feel about that?
So when you look at community boards, community review board, they come in three categories. They come in community advisory board. That's first category. That's the most effective one, I believe. Then there's what they call community review board. That's when you didn't trust the first, so you go to the second. And then there's what they consider community advisory board. Okay. I believe that if we're doing it the right way, we'll never get to number 2 and 3.
Right.
I think it needs to be community advisory. And the reason why it needs to be community advisory is because I want to hear the community's advice before we write the policy, before we implement that initiative. I want to hear what that is and have the community have a voice in how we, and how we operate. Because to do review is already after the fact. If I'm telling you you're going to review initiatives that we've already implemented, then it's just, we've already implemented. We didn't even hear you out. Does that make sense?
Oh, of course.
And community advisory, I don't agree with with oversight. I don't agree with oversight, and I'll tell you why. Because what we have had is when you have community people that are really involved, advisory is the perfect one because they have a seat at the table early on. But by the time we get to oversight, there's a lot of what I'm going to refer to as I forget the term, but it's activists. We have activists that are trying to prove a point. And so the way I look at it is, if I tell you that I'm an expert at restaurants, I'm absolutely an expert. Why? Because I've never worked in one. I've never been a dishwasher. I've never been a maitre d'. I've never been a waiter. I've never been a cook. I've never been a chef. But I've eaten at restaurants ever since I was 20 years old. And I've seen them on TV. I want to run your restaurant for you. You'd probably say no. And the reason why you're going to say no is because I have no history. I have no background. I have no, right. There is no legally sufficient training that I have that will give me that, that level of supervisory authority. And so I think that oversight is only when we've failed as a police department to provide some level of advisory capacity to the community. So I think advisory is the best way to go, and we will do that.
Okay. I got one last question, and we can go into your website, which I want to put up on the screen. School shootings, the school bullying.
Right.
By experience, I can tell you, and when my son was in high school, I mean, there was videos of people fighting in the bathrooms and nothing ever got done, or people the teachers weren't even aware. The mass engagement of like what happened in downtown in Biscayne, when there was a rioting going on and stuff.
Which incident was that?
I can't remember which one, but it's the one where Bayside got destroyed.
Okay.
And City of Miami went out there, and it was a car. They put police cars on fire and all that. And
got it. Okay.
So incidents like that, and I know it's way far from that, from school shootings and bullying. But I just want a quick take on how would you deal with these situations, and what would you do?
So I think it's a wide range of situations. So it'd be hard to get.
I agree.
It'd be hard to get in one. But speaking specifically about school safety, right? I put together the mass casualty attack protocols for Miami-Dade County. We did that. We weren't responsive to anything. We were actually proactive. I looked around, and I said, we're not ready for it in the best capacity that we can be. So I put together a group of the most argumentative people that I know to tell me how I could be wrong on what I thought we should be doing. So that's something that we're always monitoring. And as far as schools go, there's always adjustments that we can make to make them safer. Now, the problem with that is that there's a lot of people in the public that don't agree with some things that would be effective. So we have to take the politics out of this. We have to take the emotion out of this. And we have to start to figure out what's more important, safety or perception. I'm going to give you an example. The blueprint to make schools safer is actually very simple. And that is, it's the same blueprint that we have for courthouses, right? In the courthouse, you have one entry point, one exit point. You have metal detectors there, and they can go. Now, if you tell that to parents, there's going to be a percentage of parents that feel that, no,
we don't want that in our school.
We don't want that in our school. Okay. And it's like, okay, I understand. But you also now, again, take the emotion out of it. How else can that be done in a way that you can guarantee that no guns are going to be in the school? And there's no other way to do it. Does that make sense?
Of course.
So now we have to figure out and think rationally at which one is more important to us. The perception, right, of I don't want my kids to feel like, to be scared of going into a school, or actually something that provides safety to those kids. Now, it's very easy. We can all say, well, we need a police officer in every school. But now let's think rationally again, and let's take the emotion out of this. We had a police officer at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. So that blueprint didn't work. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of things that we can do. But the main thing that's structurally what we can do is we can do that. Now, as far as metal detectors and one entry point and one exit point, that's going to solve 90% of the problems right there. But there's the social stigma of it that kids have to go through a metal detector, right? So that's something that we have to balance. And neither one is the right answer. It's just what's safer and what's not safer, and what's politically correct and what's not. And those are the balance.
Well, we are running out of time, and I would love to have you again and go over some more questions, because there's many questions I know the viewers would love to hear. But really quick, what is your website so people can look you up?
The website is www.marioforsheriff.com. It's all one word, Mario for Sheriff. And on Instagram, also Mario for Sheriff. And please look it up. I ask everyone to be skeptical. Don't believe anything I said. Listen to what I'm saying and fact check everything. There's a lot of noise in this race. There's a lot of political influence in this race, and I think we need a sheriff that understands every level of this department and every corner of Miami-Dade County in order to provide the best service for our families.
Oh, there you have it, marioforsheriff.com. Please, viewers, do your homework. This is one of several candidates running for sheriff. Do your due diligence. It's very important, because we do need somebody that's not in the political world to be our sheriff. We really do. That's my opinion on it anyway. So thank you very much. Viewers, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to try to get some other candidates on the show so you can see what they got to say. Mario, again, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you for coming by.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.